Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Vicki Dello Joio. Hey, Vicki.
Hi there, Kimberly. It's so good to be here.
Yes, I am excited to have you on and about some of the things we're going to talk about. So, just so people know you, I'm going to read your bio first. Vicki Dello Joio brings a lifetime of experience as a world-class performer, sold-out showstopper, and transformational speaker who has brought audiences to their feet time and again. In addition, she brings over 50 years experience as a master teacher of Qigong, ancient Chinese practices for energy management. She has found that when speakers harness their personal energy, they communicate with passion, presence, and power. Since 1975, her brand of brilliance has empowered wellness motivated, spiritually inclined seekers and speakers to infuse body, mind, spirit practices into their very selves so they can tap into their birthright of joy. Use it as a fuel, not a goal, for a lifetime. Popular host of monthly program Chi Talks and Hall of Fame recognized teacher of the Chinese Art of Qigong by the Association of Women Martial Art Instructors. Vicky's spiritual fitness program and book, The Way of Joy, has transformed the lives of thousands of participants. With her diverse background, Vicky has developed unique teaching methods to work with people to focus their energy with increased awareness, transform obstacles into opportunities, and enhance their creative potential so they can have the impact they know they were born to make, both in business and in life. Now she is applying her years of experience to support visionary speakers, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to take inspired action, step into leadership, sustain their momentum over time, and change the world right here and now. I mean, I think I should get a standing ovation just for reading this. This is so
It was a lot of
words
words,
are so
wasn't it?
empowering, right? It's so empowering, and we all want that. We want to be
Yes.
leaders and powerful and passionate and
And now is the
excited about
time,
life.
don't you think, Kimberly? These are the days that we really need to step into that leadership. And that's part of what's exciting about the work that I get to do because I have the opportunity to see people. Right now, my favorite thing is to applaud from the back of the room. Right, I spent a lot of time on stage, but right now, being a director and helping people speak out is really just phenomenal.
Yeah, so tell me your story. I was especially interested about, qigong for 50 years, and I know just a little tiny bit of qigong, and I have friends who do qigong, and I know how powerful it is and how it just permeates your whole life when you are able to use it properly. So excited to hear your story.
Well, I love how you just characterized Qigong. I haven't quite heard it described that way, and it's absolutely true. It does permeate your life. It does become sort of a way of being. It's not just practicing, movements and the techniques of Qigong, but it's also how does this inform us in terms of how we live, what we want to manifest, how we go about manifesting, and that kind of thing. So my story, just since you asked, is I was a really shy kid. I was so shy that they actually thought there might be something wrong with me. In fact, that's why my mom started sending me to theater auditions, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it did help bring me out of my shell. So I started doing theater when I was 7 years old in summer stock. So I think that in terms of the Qigong journey, I mean, there's sort of parallel journeys in a way, me as a director and a performer and a theater person, and then me as a Qigong master teacher, which has taken a long time to cultivate. I really looked at how to think about how to break through my own limitations, right? It was almost like I needed to step out of the box. I grew up very shy, and my dad, like I said, and my dad was a pretty well-known composer. So we had a lot of luminaries around our house all the time. And my father's attitude was always, he would say things like, women aren't supposed to, they don't have any innate talent. I mean, they're here to support us men and our genius. He was very operatic in terms of how he spoke. And then I remember one time visiting him not long before he died, and his wife was asking me questions about the work I do. At one point she said, "This is great stuff, Vicki, you should talk about it more." And he said, "No, you know what I love about her is she never talks about herself." I remember thinking to myself, thank you. Now I know where this comes from. That was sort of imbued in my DNA as, as a woman, and as, that I needed to just be the support for others. And coming full circle, a lot of what I do now is that, although I do still do speaking and performing. But I think that my Qigong journey began with that. And then, of course, since I've been doing it for so long and have studied so many different systems and have been and created my own hybrid system, now I would say, it's the various ways that I've kind of re-fallen in love with it has happened again and again through different incidents that happen in my life.
Oh. So there's some people that have no idea what we're talking about.
Right.
They're like,
Yes.
what is Qigong? So could
Let's
you
start with
give us
that.
the grade school definition?
Yeah. Yeah. Qigong is one of these words that's a kind of an umbrella word like dance. So if you say, oh, I dance, I take dance classes. Well, is it Alvin Ailey? Is it tap, or is it ballet? Is it ballroom? The same thing with Qigong. It's an umbrella word that actually just came out in the 50s. And what it refers to are different lineages and systems that involve movement, breath, visualization, inner tracking. It's the same kind of, it's working with some of the same kind of medicine that acupuncture and acupressure work on. So both classical and traditional Chinese medicine that work with different lines of energy. So it was working with energetics in that way. But some Qigong is martial arts. It's, Tai Chi is one style that a lot of people have heard of. So that's one type of Qigong, which is really based on a martial art, even though it's very slow and sedate looking. Then there's medical Qigong, which is probably the most popular Qigong other than Tai Chi in this country, where people are really looking at how to optimize their health and really take back their power around health choices and how to live a healthy life. And then there's spiritual Qigong, that's really working with how do we align our sense of inspiration, our passion, our heart, and the actions that we take. So there's all these different styles. And what I've done is I've just sort of drawn from them, because I've studied for so long, I've drawn from different systems a bunch of practices that I call the way of joy, because I started to think about my name, which is Vicki Dello Joio, which means basically victory of joy. And it was like, well, there's a legacy. How am I gonna, what does that mean for me, right? So I started to think about what would it be to look at joy as a fuel instead of a goal, a little bit like you read in my bio. That instead of, if I have, the right partner, or I have enough money, or I have the perfect home, then I get to have joy. What if it was something that was actually a given, or a birthright, right? I think babies are born with innate joy. And when I want to be really clear that when I say joy, I'm not saying happy, happy, and just sort of, putting a smile on difficult times. I'm really talking about the embrace of all emotions, but from a place of centeredness. So that sort of was the birth of the system that I've developed over my time as a student and as a teacher.
So do people come to learn this because they have a health challenge? Do they come to learn it because they want to be more disciplined? Why do they come and learn Qigong?
That's such a great question, because it's a yes and yes. I mean, those could be reasons. A lot of people hear about Qigong, especially, like I said, in this country, around the health benefits of it. Now, I'm not a medical Qigong expert. I have people that I refer people out to other Qigong teachers who are really looking at particularly serious things like cancer or something like that. Although I've had many students who've had serious illnesses and have had good results from the practice. But people come to me at this point, it's changed, right, over time. But at this point in my career, it's really people are coming because they want to feel empowered. They want to feel centered in themselves. things are so volatile right now. I have so many people in my life who say, it feels like the world is on fire, and I don't know if your listeners experience that, but a lot of people are feeling like I really need to find how to stay grounded in myself, how to really stay heart-centered, no matter what the chaos looks like and whatever's coming at me. How do I stay heart-centered and grounded and clear? And so the people come to me a lot of times with anxiety issues or feeling hopeless or overwhelmed. Any of those things where we're disempowered, off your center, they come with those things. And some people just come because they love to move and I have a lot of people from different spiritual traditions, whether it's Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or Buddhism, who come from different, backgrounds. And I love that because basically Qigong is not a religion. It's a practice that can be done. I mean, my mother-in-law's was a very devout Christian, basically should have been a minister herself. She was married to a minister. Her parents and her grandparents and her great-grandparents were all ministers. But as soon as I started talking about some of the ways in which we can kind of draw God in, using her language, draw God in, or how we can express ourselves as children of God, she took to it like a duck to water. And that's what I find is that people, when they're really just wanting to align their spiritual understanding with the actions that they take, that's all a process that Qigong takes you through, because it's aligning these three different, I call them realms of consciousness, which is the heaven realm, which is your inspiration or your sense of being tapped into the divine, or just the large perspective. If you don't have a spiritual practice, that's fine too. Along with the heart, which has to do with your passion and how you show up in the world and your boundaries. And there's a lot that goes into being human. And then the earth realm is all about what you manifest, how you walk your talk. And so when people come to me, that's really what they're working on, is aligning those so that they can stay really empowered in their authenticity, which I know is a buzzword, but it's real.
So the actual practice, is movement the only part of it? Are you chanting or saying something, or is the instructor saying some affirmations? I mean, what does it look like? What do people do?
Well, it depends on, who you're working with, but when people work with me, yes, there is definitely movement, and it's really pretty gentle. Some is more complex than others, but a lot of what I teach, particularly online, are very basic practices that anybody can do. And I'm very adept at this point in my work of, adapting it to different physical abilities, because I work with people who are high-end athletes all the way to people who are paraplegic in chairs, and everybody can move chi. So we do movement, there's breath work, there's a visualization. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll wed a certain movement to an affirmation that I invite you to make up for yourself. So I'm not providing you with, this is how you should think. I don't even believe in that. I'm really looking at, how do I draw out from you what is truly your truth? And then we do these movements that help instill that message in your very cells. So it's not just in your head anymore. It's south of neck. It's, it goes beyond just what we're thinking into how we're feeling it, which of course then creates a resonance, an energetic resonance, which is, like things like the law of attraction are based on those types of concepts. So basically, yeah, I work with affirmation, I work with breath work, and I also work with different techniques, like imbuing water with your intention. There's all kinds of different ways that we can do it, but essentially movement, breath, visualization, those three things. And that's the one thing that does kind of connect all Qigong. There are Qigong teachers who have a very strict, very traditional approach, where they're really working, where it's really the teacher is the one that's the deliverer of information. It's more unilateral. And the way I teach, I don't actually like that. And probably because I'm female, it's kind of my guess, but I really like to see how do you tap into who you are and your wisdom, and how can I help guide and support that so that you really own it. And we need all of us to be empowered right now.
Just from a physical standpoint, like if you do yoga, you kind of become more flexible. Is there some physical benefits to Qigong?
Yes, there's definitely things that where you become more flexible, although it's not anywhere as rigorous as yoga can be, where you're, doing a lot of asanas where you're holding poses for a long time, it's much more flowy, right? So you're moving all the time. It's not like it's holding a static pose and just breathing in it, but you're moving it. And I think the physical benefit is really um, coming to a place where it's just calming. It's calming and grounding. So people come with all kinds of stuff from their day, and after even a 45-minute session, they walk away feeling like, okay, I know what I need to do to cope, because their body informs them. You're informing their body of what they want, and their body responds with a sense of calm presence. And that's what really, that's sort of the evolution of my work now, as I work with speakers and stuff, has been really about how to cultivate what I call your power presence.
Mhm. So, you talk about chi, and some people know what that is, some people don't, but I know it's just like energy. But
Exactly.
when you're doing the practice, how do you know you're moving chi? How do you know?
I love that question so much, Kimberly. That's such a great question. There's different practices I do that allow people to start to feel something. And what I've noticed is that a lot of times, there's some people who come and they go, "Oh my gosh, I can feel this energy in my hands. It's like warmth, tingling, a sense of well-being." Those are all signals that you're moving chi, that the chi is flowing. Um, and then, they'll, like a month later, they'll come and say, "I don't feel it anymore," but it's because they've integrated it so much that that it's not like a big surprise. It's all of a sudden just part of their natural state of being. And other people come and they don't feel anything, but there's this saying in Qigong, Yi Dao, Qi Dao, where your mind goes, or where your attention goes, the Qi follows. So sometimes it's just about trust, that everybody has Qi and we are moving it. But a lot of times people experience it as a kind of tingling sensation and kind of a sense of possibility thinking, like their brains open up to something that they might not have been open to before.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually had a massage therapist that he was trained in some form of that. And he used it when he was doing massages. So um his I could actually feel it. I mean, I could
And
feel it.
how did you experience it, Kimberly? What did you
It
feel?
felt very like it almost felt like he was pushing down harder than he was, but it wasn't his physical pressure, even though he was using some pressure. He was using his whole body, and I could feel, well, almost like something being pushed through.
Mhm. So it felt like it went through layers instead
Mm.
of just pushing on your muscles or something like that. It went
Right.
through
Instead of being
layers.
surfacey, it felt like it was pushed in a lot deeper.
Nice. How
Yeah.
that sounds like a very nice experience to have.
Yeah, it was. So now you work with speakers. So how do speakers use this?
There's some practices that I do that can address anything from stage fright to having, I have actually a little booklet that I wrote called the Let's Get Real About Charisma. So it's the energy that comes out of you. Like, what makes an audience lean forward and really connect with you? What makes somebody really want to listen? And there's an energy field that's called Wei Qi. And I have a lot of stories about Wei Qi, but basically Wei Qi is externalized energy. So there's a word called Nei Qi, which is internal energy, and then there's Wei Qi, external energy. So, if you go to a party or to a networking event or to, some family gathering, and there's some people that you might not know and you feel really drawn to them, and other people you feel like, I think I'll give that person a pass.
Mhm.
So that goes beyond, how they're dressed or even the words they're using. A lot of times we're reading energy, even if we don't believe in energy, we respond. We are energetic as much as narrative beings, and we respond to that. And that's from that field called Wei Qi. So I first discovered, one of the first ways I discovered it was I was walking down the street one day. I was going home from working out at a kun. It was just like basically a dojo where I was, I don't want to get into a whole long thing about it, but basically I had started to learn self-defense because I had gotten beaten up or attacked on the street. So I wanted to learn how to defend myself. So I was in this Kajikembo class, which is a very intense self-defense type of, it's a beautiful, beautiful martial art. But I was getting tired of kicking people, of hurting people, of feeling like I got hurt. And I kept thinking, there's got to be something else that I can do. And as I was walking down the street, I was walking home from the subway, which is called BART here in the Bay Area, walking home from BART. And this guy walked around the corner. And, he had that kind of energy that I know a lot of women will say, oh, yeah, I know what you mean, where it was just like, uh-oh. And I was particularly on alert because I'd had that incident on the street. But I didn't go into some kind of, fighting place. I basically just lengthened my spine, and internally, I remember having the thought, I am. And he walked up to me. As he walks up to me, his hand bounces like about, I don't know, 6 inches from contacting my breast. He walks away looking at his hand and then looking at me and looking at his hand and looking at me. So I knew that he hadn't missed. He'd felt something. I got home, I had a message on the machine from somebody who became my Qigong teacher about talking about how, I think, Vicki, it's time for you to start working on the internal arts of Qigong as opposed to just the fighting forms. So I started doing that. So, but since then, I have a million stories about Wei Qi that's both from my students and from myself about how this external energy, which is palpable and real, and this is how I knew it because and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't think like, oh, I'm going into a Wei Qi field now. All I did was lengthen my spine, and something started to emerge just from that ownership. That then I realized was called Wei Qi. Then I started to really learn and go deeper into what that means. And so for speakers, kind of winding back to your question, for speakers, being able to step out on stage and emanate a certain type of energy that invites people to connect with you, whether it's through the stories that you're telling, because that's the other specialty I have, is helping draw people's stories out, whether it's a story you're telling or how you are engaging with people. That's all a product of Wei Qi. So I have Qigong exercises that I'll have speakers do before they step on stage, or if they're nervous. I had one client who he would panic every time he had to talk. So we did some Qigong work that he could do in the bathroom before going out and then going onto stage. So there's all kinds of different techniques that we can use that can help align us and put make that Wei Qi energy more palpable and more lead with that energy as opposed to whatever might be going on internally beforehand.
Mhm. Yeah, and that made a question come up in my mind. So, as a speaker, I always want to connect with my people, and it's really
Right.
important to me. And
Yes.
um, in fact, uh, there's been times when I felt like I lose it, and then I almost can't keep speaking because I felt like I lost the connection. And when I go internal, so let's say that someone's speaking and they feel like the audience was with them, but all of a sudden they feel like there's a disconnect
Mm-hmm.
in that moment because you're there, you're still in the middle of speaking. How do you regain that composure, that centeredness? How do you get back to yourself and also reconnect with your people?
I'm a big believer in transparency. So when that happens, what I mean, there's a lot of things that can trigger that, right? That can trigger that kind of anxiety or that sense of disconnect. It could be somebody frowning in the audience. It could be somebody's pulled out their cell phone and they're looking at it instead of listening to you. Whatever it is that triggers that. Uh, there's sometimes when I remember doing this one thing where I do a lot of engagement with my audience also. I'm sure you do too, where I would be asking a question and people would be answering it from the audience. I remember doing a training for or a speaking gig for financial advisors who were not particularly forthcoming, right? They were more numbers people. So this sort of artsy way of doing something was not their thing. I asked them a question and nobody answered. So I just stopped. I said, I realize that you may feel a little shy about saying stuff, but I'm not going to keep going until I hear from you. So who is willing to say something? So I just go there. Other times I've actually just named, I think I just got lost in my thoughts. I want to just take a moment and recenter because I think what I have to say is really important. And I felt like somehow I was separated from you because I kind of got looping in my mind. So I'll just say stuff like that. I'll just spontaneously be able to say it. A lot of times naming not being grounded is the path to grounding. So when we're disconnecting, we're ungrounded. We're not right? We're not connecting through our roots. So whatever it takes to be able to come back to that grounding. Sometimes it's as simple as shifting your posture, like lifting the crown of your head so you're connected to what, like I said before, called the heaven realm, which has to do with your wisdom, your inspiration, clarity coming through, and focusing on your feet so that you're really feeling like you're getting the access of the nourishment of the earth, our mother, right, coming up through the feet. So energy coming up from the feet, coming down from the stars, being able to emanate out from the heart in that way. Sometimes it's just a matter of aligning my spine, because I find when I'm ungrounded, a lot of times I'm tilting my head, or I'm kind of slumping, or there's some part of me that's not fully present, not fully aligned between these three realms of heaven, human, and earth. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that really does make sense. And actually I got lost in it. So there I am being authentic. I got totally lost in your explanation. So
When you
um
say you got lost, do you mean that you feel like it didn't make sense to you, or that you just kind of went wandering down and thinking about your
oh,
own
I was
teachings?
going deep into what you were thinking, what you were saying.
Uh, Beautiful.
So,
Yeah.
but the question came back now. So, as a speaker, you want to connect with your audience, but you also want to have, just like when you were on the street, you do want to have some protection. Um, so you're open enough to connect, but at the same time, you're not wide open because there's a wide variety of people out there, and some of them you want to share energy with, and some of them you don't. So how do you make that? How do you do that balance?
Yeah. So the in the human realm, this principle is called boundaries dissolve barriers. And so I'm really looking at how when we hold boundaries on an energetic level, that dissolves that sense of having to keep people out or merge with them, or have them sort of go into that place that feels like maybe a danger zone.
Mhm.
The way to cultivate that boundary is a lot of times through a practice that I call cultivating discernment, really noticing what is it that feeds me, what is it that drains me, what constitutes truth for me, what is outside of that realm of truth, so that that sort of that discernment process helps us then be able to be in that boundary. So that, let's say I have one client who was speaking. She's a nationally known speaker. She's very, very, very good. She was on stage. Some guy started heckling her, asking her about this, asking her about that, kind of interrupting her, which is in some ways can be a real nightmare for a speaker. She went into the bathroom during the break. She was leading a whole long thing. She went into the bathroom during a break, and she did this one practice. She came back out. She started speaking again. The guy stopped heckling her. He came up to her afterwards, said, "This is so good. I just really need to get your book." He had completely transformed, not because of anything she did from the stage or anything she said to him, but her energy shifted. All of a sudden, that boundary was intact. He became a learner, so he got to experience more. So she was able to give him the gift of her wisdom, at the same time not get thrown or derailed. So I have, again, I have a lot of stories like that. I have another client who was presenting to the Supreme Court of Canada. She's somebody who is one of the top lawyers in the Ontario, Toronto area. She's a judge. She's an esteemed judge. She was nervous, so she was kind of going into back into that early awkward stage. She generally, as a lawyer, as an attorney, she was very adept at speaking, at being able to hold her ground, all that stuff. She had that dialed in. But because this particular case was one for the Supreme Court that was going to move the needle in terms of some social justice issue, she became, she was holding people's lives in her hands. So it was, the high stakes were really high. So we worked a lot on her alignment. We worked a lot on how to come back. I got a chance to watch this Supreme Court presentation because the Supreme Court of Canada streams a lot of their cases live. So I got to watch it. What I saw was that there was the justices, even from when she first started her first sentence, were interrupting her, were basically heckling her. There was almost like an undertone of, you don't belong here. This is not really, this case doesn't belong. It was this really weird tone. I found it disrespectful. What I found was she was like bamboo. She was so prepared internally that she was able to just answer their questions as though they were just true questions with utter grace and interest and presence, then bring it back to what was the point that she was getting to. She did it again and again. The result was incredible because a lot of her colleagues had told her this is a case that is a good case, it's important, but it's never good. They're never gonna go for it. It's not gonna work. There's no way you're going to win this case. They were supposed to go out, the justices were supposed to go out for 15 minutes, come back, render their verdict. Well, it took them a lot longer than 15 minutes. I think it was like an hour or something before they actually came back. And when they came back, she'd split the court. It took them another 7 months to decide what to do. And she learned that one of the most egregious judges, actually, she'd flipped him. I'm sure it was because of this bamboo thing that she did. It was absolutely incredible to watch her. This was one of those places where I get to be in the background clapping, saying, yes, you got this. So this, I think when you're talking about, the harm that some people can bring either through their disdain or through their heckling or through inappropriate merging, any of those things, these energetic boundaries can really be helpful.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask kind of a different question. So you want to have those skills that you're talking about for being centered and being that bamboo. But where does showmanship come in? Like, how do you balance being authentic, being centered, but you want that showmanship. You want to entertain. You want to educate, but you still want to entertain. How do you put all those together?
I think that they become a kind of a natural expression for people when they're really, really comfortable in themselves, when they're really saying, so yes, authenticity doesn't have to just be meek contained. It can come forward in all kinds of ways depending on your personality. So that's part of what we need to bring out when we're working with speakers, right? Is how do I bring that like I had this other person who sent me a speaker reel that she had done. She had taken some speaker training, and they had filmed her on a black stage with microphones and cameras and all this stuff. She was delivering this thing, but it was really awkward. She would be like automated. I don't know. I've seen this a lot with people who have a fair amount of speaker training, is that they are kind of working with the script and trying to, do the blocking. Like, I'm going to walk across here. I'm going to emphasize here. She was somebody who has a great sense of humor, and her humor wasn't there at all. It was like somehow they had erased it in this whole thing in pursuit of showmanship, and it ended up not being her. So really the showmanship has to do with how charismatic can you be being yourself, right? That's where we start to go into energy practice as opposed to just techniques, how to speak well, or how to project your voice, or all the different things which are all so important. I don't mean to diminish them, but the showmanship piece is really, really has to do with who you are and how much you can own it and bring that forward. It's one of the things I absolutely love to do with my clients.
Exactly, because we're all so unique, and
Yeah,
it makes it fun when people can just be themselves, no matter who they
absolutely.
are.
Yes, yes. And move out of the template. That's the other thing that I feel like there's a template that a lot of speaker trainers cling to, the hero's journey or the various, the J story. There's all these different templates that for me is I guess I just really want to teach people how to speak out of the box so that what they do is memorable, because a lot of those templates are so overused. They're so predictable. The hero's journey, I feel like if I hear one more hero's journey, I'm going to start to cry. It's just, I really look at, how do we tell stories so it's not a Mad Libs where you're just putting in your particular words into the template. This all has to do, so authenticity almost sounds like a mild word. I think it really has to do with being in your power, really knowing how to step into your power and be able to emanate that out so that people feel empowered as they listen to you. So it becomes contagious. It's that kind of connection where you and the audience, there's nothing like, that as a speaker, there's nothing like being on stage and having that back and forth exchange with your audience. It's like flying. There's no other feeling like it. So really aim to, how do we get there? Let's get there. And then we don't have to worry about how do I become entertaining, because you are entertaining.
Right. Or just making it, like you said, interactive, but so fun that people don't even realize that they're listening anymore.
Yeah.
When you're in a really good conversation, you're not thinking about the time or anything. You're not thinking about anything around you. You're just having this awesome conversation. And when you can get to that point as a speaker where the people are just like, they forgot that, lunch is in 10 minutes. They're just so into it and you're just like thinking.
Yeah, and feeling, right? Because
Uh-huh.
I think that that's part of the story piece of what I love to do. Always love the quote from Maya Angelou that I'm going to mess up a little bit, but basically you probably heard this. People don't remember what you said or what you did, but they always remember how you made them feel.
Mhm.
And I think stories are the way into that. That's what makes a speaker really stand out to me. Like, I think about the speakers who inspire me, people like Brene Brown, who's just such a magnificent storyteller. You're not waiting for it to be over. You can't wait to hear what the next story is, right? People lean forward. That's what I really like to try to cultivate for people, because I think that this is like I said, I feel like the world is on fire. We need voices that really bring a sense of hope and solutions and possibilities and leadership into the room.
So what is your approach for telling a story?
I actually don't have a template. I ask a whole bunch of questions, and partly I'm in a theater company now that's called playback theater, and it's a style of theater that's actually global. There are playback companies all over the world. It's a style of theater that's improvisational, but it's not like comedy improv, although there certainly can be comic elements to it. But what happens in it is that anybody from the audience who wants to gets invited to come on stage and tell a story from their life. And the actors and musicians listen for the story under the story and then play it back improvisationally. So it's not just like playing back the words that you hear, but really looking for what's underneath it. That skill, because I've been in that company for well over 20 years, that skill has really lent itself to me as a director to be able to pull out from people what the story under the story is, because that's where the juice is. It's not just like I did this and then I did that and then I did this and this happened and then that happened, which can be really boring,
Mhm.
but really looking at how do you step into living that story so you invite people into the movie of what you experienced, so that they're Indiana Jones with you, as opposed to just hearing the description of what happened. There's different ways. So there's different techniques I use to draw that out, then also different ways to deliver that story once it's clear and the message is aligned with the story.
Yeah. And there's some people that it doesn't even matter what they say. Everybody laughs or everybody's like with them. I have a friend like that. And he can say, the dog jumped up on the step. And everybody roars. Everyone roars. And you think, what did he do? How did
Yeah.
he do that? How do you do that?
I don't know how he does it. I think that I have a friend like that too. She's my performance partner. In fact, we just had a rehearsal right before this started. Pretty much every story that she tells is just hilarious. She just has that comic bone. I think that humor is super important. I think everybody can reach it, but some people have easier access than others. Other people, maybe what they're bringing is just a lot of heart to make you feel. It really depends on who you are. So
Well,
I don't have a magic bullet for how to be funny.
I was gonna say, yeah, if you some people just say, I'm just not funny, They're just not funny. And when they
Well,
try to be funny, it's just not funny.
yeah, because they're trying. When you
Mhm,
try to be, it's like, what is it, Yoda in
mhm,
Star Wars? Don't try, do. It's like,
mhm,
yeah. Um, a lot of times you can be really surprised. I remember doing one performance, a show that I was performing in, that I thought was very serious, and people just started laughing. So then I just went with it. It's like, okay, I'm pivoting, and all of a sudden I'm going to go for the comedy and really play out, the bigness of that comedy can bring. You just don't know. Sometimes an audience will. I mean, I had one client who he came to me. He's a lawyer, but he's also a songwriter. He wanted to create some stories to go along with his songs. We ended up creating a one-man show that he performed in festivals in Canada. He did the Fringe Festival. I think he had 11 performances, and some of those shows, people were dead serious. The topic was intense. It was about his very crazy French Canadian family and stuff about addiction and all this kind of stuff. Some of it was very funny, I thought. Sometimes people were dead serious. Other times people laughed all the way through, and he never knew why, right? It takes a while of performing to start to really get how do I work with the timing in a way that it's going to really land every time. So that's just performance practice, but you just can't tell. So some people might find it funny, other people don't. I don't really take it seriously. It's really more just what's the heart of what you want to say, and how do you say it in a way that keeps people's attention, keeps them engaged.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what about body movement? You talked about, and I've been taught this before. Okay, you walk to this part of the stage, then you walk to this part of the stage, and then I've had training where they say, "No, just stay put." And then they talk about, don't flail your arms around all the time. Some people, they're talking and they're doing this the whole time. They're like, that's just noise. And I was taught, just do like movement that's meaningful. So where are you on that? Should speakers be using their hands, and how much and how should they be using their hands and their body?
That's such a great question, Kimberly. And it really does come out. I can tell that you've done some of the speaker training things. It depends on you. What I'm looking for is, does it look artificial and scripted and blocked? Like, okay, now I'm doing, I want to make a point here. Does it look like it's fake, or does it look like it's coming, right? I'm Italian and Jewish, and so I have a lot of hand movement that I'll use, but it's not constant, right? It's like, playing with, every person has a different rhythm, but you want to play with the stillness and motion, right? When is the stillness, when you're wanting to really have people hear those words? When is the motion, when you're really wanting to entertain them, or you're wanting to kind of get them to see how the move, how things unroll? There's a lot of, I don't have a pat answer because I don't work with a template. So what I would just say is that when I'm working with somebody, I'm looking at them and seeing, does that feel like it's natural, or does it feel like it's unnatural? Does that distract me, or is it not? Are the details that they're telling in their story, is it too many details where I get lost in the weeds, or is it not enough details so it's super dry? Movement, content, all of that stuff really depends on the person. So it's really about, what are we pulling out? What is the message? What's the intent behind the story or the talk? And work from there. So I don't have a pat answer, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, I was wondering if you could show us something about using our chi or our energy that, you know, whether you're a speaker or not, maybe if you're on the street trying to be safe, something that how could we use this chi, this energy? How do we feel it?
I love that. Yes. There's a practice that's actually called Wei Qi, which again, it's this externalized energy. It's something that I've taught in self-defense classes when people are about to go out on the street. It's something that I've taught to speakers when they're about to go on a stage. It's something that I've taught to people because I'm also a master trainer in something called powerful non-defensive communication. When people are going to have a conversation where they're feeling defensive, or they're afraid they're going to engage in something defensive, where they're maybe intimidated, or they're feeling nervous about how it's all going to go. Wei Qi is this field of energy that, what I said, people respond to when you're in a party or something like that. It's the externalized energy coming, and it's coming from the heart, coming from the solar plexus and heart, and emanating out. This creates its own protective field. So the movement is very, very simple. you're gonna you just take your arms and you just, whichever hand's on top, it doesn't matter. You just lift your arms up over your head and then out to the sides, just like that.
Hmm.
Yes. And so you just circle this out. And as you inhale, you come up and then exhale and just let your arms come out to the sides, a little plant. And
Mhm.
again, inhale and exhale. And you do that 3 to 9 times, and then make fists with your thumbs on the insides of those fists, and then just ground like you're plugging into the earth, like you're plugging a plug into a socket. You just ground through your feet and through those hands. So you can do that standing or seated. That's one of those exercises that helps to relax the heart, relax the solar plexus. So it moves people out of what are you thinking about me, and allows me to just say, here's the gift that I'm offering you, if you're saying on a stage, which is what I encourage people who have stage fright, where they're focusing on what are they thinking of me as opposed to what is I'm offering you. So the focus is out as opposed to in. So this is a great way to have that sense of letting your heart shine. And then it couldn't be more simple. So I say 3 to 9 times in this direction. And then if you want to get really fancy, you can turn in one direction or the other and do the same movement, but front and back, so that it's now you're going to the front of you and the back of you. I'm doing it a little smaller than I would do it standing, just because of the screen. And then you can ground here and then do the same thing on the other side where you're turning and you're doing the same thing. So 3 times in each direction, front, side, side, and then you're sort of covering yourself all the way around.
Yeah, I mean, even when I did it just that 3 times, I felt my heart and my lungs open.
I saw that. I
Mm.
saw that. It was actually beautiful to see. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you had such an instant response to feeling it. So I encourage people to practice that. It's a really good thing to do, even if you're having a, you know, this difficult situation with a grandkid or with a parent or with a neighbor. To before, sometimes people, I used to have students who said they wanted me to teach a bathroom qigong class, because like that one student was like, they'd go into, the people who were working in corporations and stuff would go into the bathroom and they do a little qigong before coming out, going to the boardroom.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, if people wanted to connect with you, where do they find you? What services do you have available now? This is your advertising piece right here. Tell us all about you and how we can work with you.
Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for that question. One of the best ways for people to find out more about me is just on my website, vickidellojoio.com. But if you're interested in how do I speak from a place of passion, presence, and power, which is really the theme of what we've sort of been talking about, I encourage you to download my gift, which is called Let's Get Real About Charisma: 3 Keys to Inspire and Motivate Your Audience Every Time You Speak. People who've downloaded it have been speakers for the most part, but I've also had people who've downloaded it because they just want to speak from a place of internal power. In that, it's a pretty meaty thing. It's not just like a page or something like that, like a lot of free gifts can be a little bit spare. This is actually something I put a lot into it, including some qigong exercises that people can do that can help spark inspiration. It can help the way qi exercises in there, also to help ground when you're feeling ungrounded or feeling thrown off your center. So it's got some exercises, specific exercises, and it sort of applies them to how you show up in whether you're speaking one-on-one to a neighbor, a referral partner, a potential client, or you're speaking one-to-many from a stage. So that's one of the best ways. And then if you download that, there's information about how to connect with me directly if you want to have a conversation with me. I'm always interested in hearing people's stories and how I might support you if you have something that you're looking at, how you contribute to the world. I want to help that.
Right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So now I have a personal question. What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life right now?
And I just have to say, I love so much the work that you do, Kimberly. That I think that the whole concept of envisioning happiness, or is it called visualize happiness? Is that what your book is called? It's just so brilliant. So the question was, how do I experience what was it?
What is giving you the most
What
happiness
gives
and fulfillment at this point?
Oh, I am so blessed because I have so many things that just ran through my head. Looking at my dog's eyes, having a love exchange that I have with this little dog who's just a precious creature. But really, I think the biggest thrill I have is right now is living my legacy. I've accumulated all of these different techniques, gone from a very shy kid to somebody who's spoken to thousands of people at a time, and being able to pass that forward to the real change makers that are happening on the planet. I think that's probably what gives me the most joy. And when I'm not doing it, that's when I start to feel really stuck. So I just feel like seeing people like that lawyer speak to the Supreme Court, or another person who just recently got now to speak. She did a keynote that we worked on. Now she's been asked to speak at the UN. Seeing people who are doing massive shifts in the planet, because I just feel like I said, the world is on fire. I really want to see change happen, and I'd love to see it in my lifetime, which doesn't, this, I don't have endless time anymore. I'm at that age. So it's really about passing that legacy forward. That, and I guess the final thing I just need to acknowledge is time with my wife.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing all your wisdom and your techniques. I appreciate it so much.
It's been such a joy to connect with you, Kimberly. I appreciate our conversation so much. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, so I have one last question before we finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
My best advice is to really think about the alignment that you have between the visions that you have, the wishes that you have, the imagination, that what you're imagining into the world, along with the passion, what you care about, what matters the most in your heart, the love that you have, along with the actions that you take. I feel like when we can align our vision, our passion, and our empowerment, our power, that is what helps the world come back to balance and be the beautiful place it can be.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Vicki.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon.